Every
Alrighty, Roo, super duper. It is Thursday, March 23rd. This is the post FOMC edition of the Crypto Flight Path. And what are we going to talk about today, dear Josh?
well, same old stuff. More from the SEC. They issued a Wells notice to Coinbase, who, if you pull up, Brian Armstrong was obviously on Twitter yesterday. And Brian is the CEO of Coinbase, and basically, you know, it's really frustrating because Coinbase is a company that took all the right steps, tried to play by the rules, is a publicly traded company, met with the SEC like 30 times, right? And they get issued a Wells notice, which is just basically what it's supposed to be, right? Is a list of supposed allegations, and they're supposed to be able to respond, right? Well, according to got a tweet from Meta Lawman here, and basically he just says exactly what the entire point of the Wells notice is to allow the defendant a chance to prepare a written rebuttal of charges against them, hopefully head off a meritless lawsuit. But the SEC has refused to tell Coinbase what tokens they claim as securities. How do you rebut that? And so it just seems to me like the SEC and the government isn't playing fair, right? This is again, yesterday they raised rates 25 points. This comes out later that afternoon. It's all coordinated. It's all, FUD. It's all, the same old from these people. And I think the frustration in the crypto industry comes from there's no clear path, right? They say they want you to come in and register, and then they don't respond, or it appears that they don't play fair. So it's very, very frustrating to anybody in the industry because you've got people that just don't seem to play, that aren't playing fair.
No, it's pure they're playing politics is what they're doing. They're You have individuals that are like folks like SEC or Gensler, who are under different types of they're under types of pressure that we as like regular old schlubs off the street don't really understand. And the point I'm trying to communicate is that they Gensler may personally agree with what the industry is doing, the innovation that it's bringing, and the problems that it's solving, and the promise of a more like of a more better future for people around the world, not just here in the U.S. But unfortunately, in the political landscape and the current administration, it's just as important for survival of the people in these positions to play politics, and it is frustrating. It is irritating for us because we don't get to look behind the curtain. But I mean, if you have an IQ above sea level and you can fog a mirror, you start to see these patterns that emerge. Is that for the first part of the year, uh, Bitcoin price, for example, has appreciated nicely. The wet blankets have come off, in a manner of speaking, and these Wells notices, these other coordinated FUD attacks, don't just come out of nowhere. They are planned. People, uh, I mean, I would go so far as to say that it's a bit of a conspiracy, but that's just my opinion. But what I'm trying to really like hone in on and get down to here is that it's no accident and not a mistake and no coincidence that that this particular type of notice for this particular exchange, meaning the Coinbase folks, comes on the same day that the Federal Reserve raises interest rates in the face of the current banking crisis. It is a crisis. I don't care what anybody says. And the talking heads like the Genslers, the Powells, the Yellens, and God knows who else, the Fed governors, they're all part of a bigger they're part of a much bigger thing to try and talk this thing down so that the masses don't panic, and there's not more bank runs, and there's not further stress on the system, even though they're the ones putting the stress on the system. And the 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 sad thing is that I think you articulated this very well, is that Coinbase is a great example of a company that built a solid foundation, and from the beginning, were they factored the compliance was a part of the DNA, the fabric of the organization from the beginning. And I think I'm really hopeful that they're going to fight this, and they're going to point out the hypocrisy. And you know, look at how some people on Twitter are responding to this. I read a tweet yesterday, a response, a reply from someone that said that the fact that Armstrong and Coinbase were going to fight this, and depending on how they fought it, they said the loosely that they would move all of their crypto onto the platform, which is a which is which was their way of saying, I'm going to vote and show my support by putting my money where my mouth is, like whatever type of money that is, whether it's crypto. In this case, it's crypto. They're going to move it onto the platform and start using it as a show of support. I thought that was really interesting to read in the face of people saying you need to get your crypto off exchanges, blah blah blah. But I thought that was very interesting
It is
to read.
interesting. It is interesting. I've noticed that this has had somewhat of a galvanizing effect. And of course, you're not going to have the Bitcoin maximalists join. They're just going to throw daggers and, dance on, their own, you know, self-righteous beliefs, which is again, another frustrating thing about this. But that's a bold statement. Whoever's going to do that, I mean, I wouldn't recommend leaving crypto on any exchange. That's a very there's other ways to show your support. I would use Coinbase. I have used Coinbase. I do use Coinbase to buy crypto and then move it off the exchange. But yeah, that's interesting. I think though, at some point, and this might be it. Crypto's going to have to wake up to the fact that we are in a fight. We've kind of been able to go under the radar and kind of just act like none of this is happening. We're under attack. I mean, that's what's going on here. There's no questions about it. This administration, that can't regulate banks, wants to regulate, a new internet financial system, and it's they don't want to regulate it. They want to snuff it out, right? Let's just be real about it. Like they're going to try to limit access to this stuff. They're going to come out with all kinds of articles. They're going to lie. They're going to do what they've done for the past 2.5 years. I mean, it's past the point of, you know, let's just wait and see what happens. Like they've taken their position. They're not being reasonable. They're not trying to help the industry at all. All they're trying to do is that they're just money grabs, right? Like the markets go up, they issue more notices, right? It's just the same old, and they don't even explain, why, right? They don't give these companies a chance to rebuttal. And I think Coinbase and Brian Armstrong are going to fight this because it's ridiculous, right? They've complied with the SEC. They're a publicly traded company. They got permission to be a publicly traded company. Everybody was aware of what was going on. It's the same old from these people. They don't play fair. They're never going to. They lie. They cheat. They do backroom deals. And I know you say that like it's politics, but I think it's more than politics. And there's somebody pressuring these people to do these things because objectively it makes Gensler, the head of the CE, look like a moron, right? Like he's having more meetings with Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX and backroom deals. Then 3 to 5 banks fail, soon to be more, and all they can talk about is trying to regulate crypto. Very frustrating.
Yeah, the pay no attention to the lobbyists behind the curtain, the people that are working directly for the legacy banking business. I was going to say legacy banking infrastructure, but it's not the infrastructure that is directly at threat here. It's the business of banking that is the one is the it's
What's
the
funny?
boogeyman. That's
What's funny about that is it's like okay, you've got the banks lobbying the politicians to put pressure on crypto. Meanwhile, the politicians are coming up behind the banks and stabbing them in the back to try to get all the money to, the big four banks so they can have complete and total control. And that's what that Fed now is. I mean, they're coming out in July with it. They can call it again. They might not call it a CBDC, but they just issued, and this was on Zero Hedge. They came out with a fourth reason of money, and that's for societal control. They're literally saying this stuff. I mean, I can find it on. Let me find it on
Yeah,
Zero Hedge.
I don't doubt it at all. I
It
think,
they're saying the quiet part out loud.
yeah, the good news, or it's like I'm trying to see the silver lining here. I think there's gonna be. I think this is kind of a last. I think it has potential. So first of all, people hate change, and like that's part of the problem that the crypto industry has had over the last several years is that there are still some people that don't that they think, oh, this might be good stuff, this might be cool, this might be a better way to do it, but I'm just gonna, I'm not really interested. uh it's too much, it's too much. Now that's on an case by case basis. At the individual level, people make these choices, and they accept or like push back and reject these ideas of doing things differently. Okay, but what I'm driving toward here is that this Fed now being a government program is gonna, it's not gonna be this. The adoption rate, in my opinion, is not going. There's not going to be this sweeping adoption of this thing all of a sudden. I think the beauty of the way this is going to be, the way this is being handled, and the growing distrust of the current administration is just another. It's more kindling on the fuel to, or more kindling and fuel on the fire of distrust and being feeling disenfranchised, feeling frustrated with how the current administration and like et al are behaving and operating and the choices they're making. And what I'm hopeful for is that using the word you used earlier, galvanizing, or being a galvanizing force, or an ingredient in the mix that galvanizes people to stand up and get in touch with their representatives and participate in government. I think part of the problem here is that people don't participate like they might have in the past, where the representation are well versed in what the constituents want and what the constituents are basically demanding. And they put us, I think a good example of this, you don't have to like Ron DeSantis, for example. You don't have to like Ted Cruz. You don't have to like any of these people. But I think what's interesting is that DeSantis is a great example, in my opinion and in my mind. He's going on the record in public, in the media, to basically say that we're not going to, like, the state of Florida is not going to tolerate this thing. And I think it's really important, and I'm thankful for that personally, because I'm in the camp that will fundamentally reject a CDBC and fundamentally rejects federal government overstep, and the idea that governments control people is quote unquote horsepucky. And I'll fight to the death that the governments work for people, not the other way around. Like,
The
I don't work for
problem,
government. Government
the
works for me. You know what I mean?
yeah, the
This
problem
is a
with that, the problem is though people don't trust the government at all. Like because of actions the government's taken, you can reach out. People don't feel like they're heard, right? And so you can reach out all you want to your senators, which we do, and we recommend you do. But I think a big problem is this, what you mentioned earlier, is that people don't engage with these. Well, because they don't feel like it matters, right? Because for so long, and it doesn't matter Republican or Democrat, right? It's just kind of like they're going to do whatever they want to do, and they've been able to accumulate a massive amount of power, right? And so I think though what's going to happen is that they're going to keep screwing up and keep making these mistakes, and they're just going to lose their authority, like moral authority. People are just not going to, in the same way. Remember when Elon Musk first got into Bitcoin and the market moved on every tweet, right?
Mhm.
Like that started to happen when the SEC got a stick up its ass and started sending Wells notices to everybody. The market would dump every time. Well, they just sent a Wells notice to Coinbase, and everybody just said, "All right, you know, people are going to stop caring eventually, right? Because it's just they understand that it's not good behavior. It's not, these guys aren't acting, you know, morally. They're not acting ethically. They're not playing fair. It's just a money grab. All these people want, they're just going to try to sell. It's just that's just my opinion, right? Like, but they're not playing. They're not doing what a government agency should do, right? What the thing is designed to do is protect customers, and they're screwing everybody. And so at some point, people are just going to stop paying attention to them, right? Like, at some
Yep.
point, it's just they don't have you know infinite employees to go sue everybody, and I think what they're trying to do is just slow this thing down because they understand they can't stop it, and so they're just trying to throw sticks in people's tires. But like at the end of the day, it's not going to matter, and it might actually have the opposite effect. People are so tired of these people overreaching. They might just say, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go into crypto because I don't like the government. If the government doesn't like crypto, that means I should probably like crypto.
Exactly. So I think that's an interesting dynamic that, I mean, I have to think, or I try to think about like what it's like to be in a position where I would have to behave accordingly, like someone like a Gensler or Yellen, and I don't know what it's like, obviously, because I'm not connected that way. I don't have the same type of political ambition to reach, these positions of perceived power or like actual power to like influence policy at the national level and basically a figurehead. So Gensler is a figurehead for a massive apparatus that operates in ways that individuals can't. You understand, hopefully you understand what I mean when I say that, is that he's just a mouthpiece, just like Yellen's a mouthpiece, Jerome Powell's a mouthpiece, the president's a mouthpiece, our senators and like our local government people are technically mouthpieces. The point I'm trying to get to is that I don't know what it's like, but the the reality is that these people have careers that they care about, and and this is just human nature. They're going to look out for number one. So Gensler is just trying to protect his career as much as anyone else, like a Yellen or a Powell. And the sad thing is that the truth is that it's supposed to be working for the public and keeping the public's best interest in mind. But what's happening is you see that the banking lobby, I don't have any proof of this, so take it with a grain of salt. This is just me being a conspiracy nuthead. But the banking lobby is very powerful because they are funded by the big banks. And the big banks don't want to have to continue to fight and find ways to innovate and keep pace with the innovation that the crypto industry at large has brought
Well,
to
they can't.
money.
Can't.
Yeah, exactly. And so the only thing they can do is they know how to write checks, and they know how to stir the pot, and they understand human behavior in people, and they know that if you sprinkle a little bit of FUD, um, people people's lower brains turn on and they shut everything on the frontal side off, and people just clam up and don't do anything, and that's
At
largely
some
what
point, yeah,
they're hoping for.
at some point, that's going to have to hit a crescendo, right? Because people again are going to start ignoring the flood because it's the same thing over and over again. They're just going to have to keep escalating it to a point where they blow themselves up, or metaphorically speaking, with you know, BS. And I get what you're saying about these people are in positions where they have to protect their career, blah blah blah. But I guess the frustrating part for me is like, where does the truth factor into that? Do they just not care at all about the truth? Are they just self-serving entities that are more concerned about their paycheck than what's actually right for the people they purportedly serve? I guess so. I guess that's the world we live in, right? They'd rather get up there and lie about things like, Janet Yellen, like we were talking earlier, the banks are safe. And then she comes out and says, we'll backstop all the regional banks. And then she says, we won't. And then Powell raises 25 basis points, like adding pressure, like you said earlier, to a system that's already in trouble, right? And so, you know, are the banks safe, right? And if they aren't, here we are again, 2008, all these leaders come out and say everything's safe. And meanwhile, normal people are like, okay, well, they say it's safe, it must be safe. And 2 weeks later, their money's gone.
Right, and we're a species and a nation with amnesia. And I'm telling you, like what I laughed about last night as I was trying to go to sleep is that people have already forgotten about Biden coming out and saying that they were going to double the capital gains tax. They also have already forgotten that we were going to be taxed on unrealized gains. That's all water under the bridge now. Like because then it all I'm trying to communicate by what I'm articulating here is that the thing I really hang on to is that the FUD is interchangeable, and we're a species with amnesia, and we've already forgotten about the 2 weeks ago FUD because the new scheduled FUD is here, and it has to do with uh like it's easy. What I'm trying to say here is it's easy for Yellen to now say, oh well, we're not going to do the thing I said before because forget about that, we're here now. And like this is it's
Well, no, and
unbelievable.
it's well again, and then they say, there's no new money in the system, but they've opened, Fed when they're putting money everywhere. Like, and it's like they get up there and they tell people, you know, yeah, we're adding to the balance sheet, but it's not the same as the last time we added to the balance sheet, and it's just like, all right, like you can call it whatever you want, but you're doing it, right? And then you have all these supposedly macro experts on Twitter being like, well, actually, it's not really new money because blah blah blah, and it's like, shut the fuck up, like just shut up, like nobody, it gets exhausting. I guess we're in it too much, but like, I guess something to do too is just turn it off, turn the TV off, close your laptop, go outside, enjoy life. Like, all this stuff is going to be resolved, and there's not a lot. And what I was thinking about last night before bed is I have a tendency to get worked up over things I can't control. I don't control any of this, right? Like, there's not a whole lot
Same.
I can do. We're trying to reach people, we're trying to help educate about crypto and what's going on. And then, I can reach out to my senators, I can show support. I signed up for Coinbase's, action, to get emails about they know, where you live, and if there's stuff happening, I'll gladly go help any way I can. I can donate money to the right causes. Those are things I can control. What I can't control is corruption in government, right? I can't control, you know, dishonest politicians, and so why worry about them? Right? Just keep on plugging forward. Luckily, it looks like there's a lot of really smart people in the crypto industry that are lawyers and are ready to step up. I saw Florida Blockchain Alliance, and I think it was like South Carolina or North Carolina Blockchain Alliance, pledging support. I mean, I think that's what needs to happen. I think there needs to be a united front, against some of this government overreach. Uh, and I think we need to let people know in the next election that if you don't support crypto, your time in politics is short because there's a lot of us.
That's right. And perhaps, ironically enough, this is what it will take. And I don't know this to be true. This is just me thinking out loud. Is that perhaps what could be happening is that people do see the writing on the wall. So in their minds, they think, well, I have to be seen to oppose this. But the silver lining could be that when the government opposes something, people are galvanized to go after it, and that will be the thing that needs to happen. So I'm not saying I'm thankful for all of this FUD crap, because I'm not. What I'm thankful for, though, is that there are people like, whether we like them or not, the Dennis Porters, the Brian Armstrongs, and all the like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of other people that are the fires being lit internally. And we've said in the past about how Bitcoin, for example, will win one mind and one new wallet at a time, in self custody. So what I'm hoping here is that as people's fires get lit in the face of this overreach and this stupidity and this FUD, is that they do get lit, and they start to talk to each other. They start to talk to other people, and the news of what's happening begins to spread, but not in the traditional media nightmare, the mainstream media madness. I'm talking about individuals talking to each other, saying, you know what, this is crap, and I'm gonna, this is what I'm gonna do. are you in, or are you not? And what do you think? And then educating, and like think like if you talk to just if all of us that give a crap about this just talk to one or two other people and help them start to understand, then if that starts to happen at scale, then
Well, I think it
interesting
is.
things start to happen.
I think it is. I mean, I've got anecdotal evidence of that. I have two or three friends that they're interested and have been interested, but like all of a sudden they're very interested in what's happening. Right now. I think what has happened is it's in combination with everything that's happened over the few years that people are starting to wake up to the fact that hold on a second, are these guys really working for us? Like, and it certainly doesn't seem like it. And so the next step is how do I protect myself from them, right? And that's where we're at, right? Because you've got government overreach, you've got a president that can't speak a full sentence, right? And you've got whoever his masters are dictating whatever policy, and it feels an awful lot like they want control, right? And that's what people worry about now. The new one I've seen is the CBDC. Well, actually, people like, well, actually, a CBDC isn't really that bad, like, and it's like, all right, you do it, like, you give me your money, give me all your money, we'll run an experiment, and then I'll decide what you spend it on, and you tell me if it's bad or not, you know I just don't understand, and I think part of that too is you have to remember on Twitter and all these spaces that a lot of these people are there because they're meant to create division and you know promote misinformation as much as politicians don't. They put people in there to do that on purpose, right, and fire people up. So you always have to take all this stuff with a grain of salt and be very wary of who you follow and who you pay attention to. uh, perfect example of that is that Brett Weinstein guy. Now everybody for like 2 years was like, this guy's so smart. He's on these programs. Now they all think he's a spy. It's like,
Yep.
nobody trusts anybody anymore. It's like, but yeah, it's unfortunately that's the way you have to be, and that's why Bitcoin exists. You don't have to trust anybody. Like that's the beauty of it.
That's right. And this is something that like the I think the like what one of the fundamental threads here is that the and this is a feather in the administration's cap, is that people in general don't understand how money works, like at the basic levels. They don't understand where it comes from. They don't understand credit. And I'm not, how many of us come out of the womb understanding how credit works and how base layer money works and how currencies work? I mean, I'm just saying, we're born, we become children, we become teenagers, we go out and we're told, or we learn that we need to earn a living, and to do that we typically work and get paid for that exchange of labor. But how many of us when we were younger and getting our first jobs really were sitting around thinking about, like, well, this month I'm going to trade X number of hours of labor for this many units of the local currency in my nation where I live, and what's this worth compared to other? I mean, I'm just saying that, like there's still there's this ongoing need for people to understand and learn a little bit about how money works, and that's not always an easy thing, in my humble
Well,
opinion.
well, if this keeps up, they're about to learn real quick.
Okay, yeah, and and perhaps that's what it's going to take. And I know from personal experience, anecdotally, of course, is that I've tried to lead several horses to the well to drink, uh, specifically around understanding the base, like not even the terrifying case for Bitcoin, but the base case for Bitcoin, for example. And it was like, well, and there's a laundry list of, like, an endless list of reasons why it's, oh well, I'm not really concerned about my blah blah blah, or I think the risk that you're describing just isn't realistic to think. Okay, fine. I've had to learn the hard way too, with regard to trying to bring people to understanding. And what I've also learned is that it does take these catalytic events. Like, there's a catalyst, some stuff happens, and then boom, some stuff hits the wire in the mainstream media, and then all of a sudden the normies wake up and they're like, what's going on, all of a sudden. And and the best jokes, or some of the best jokes I've seen, best tweets I've seen, about how when we go from one crisis to the next is that we went from having a world full of COVID experts on Twitter to now having a world full of Federal Reserve experts, rate policy experts. Now we're going to go to having a full complement of uh, CDBC experts on Twitter.
Can't
That
wait.
it's a
Cannot wait.
lagging, a major lagging indicator, is what I'm trying to get to, is that these people are hypnotized. Another great meme is the one where they got
All
the
the all
rolly
the
eyes and
all
all
the
the
gray people, the current thing, they're all
yeah, whatever
saying
the
that.
current thing is.
Yeah.
Here's the current FUD. It's and it was the financial crisis in 2008. Like, pay no attention, and
Well,
then it was
you gotta
uh
be really careful with these people, because like, you watched the Fed yesterday, you watched Jerome Powell say the banking system's fine, you watched Janet Yellen. They're phenomenal liars, right? So like, people, it's unbelievable. Like, and the first time I realized this was like, I watched an interview with like Bill Clinton like 2 years ago. I was real young when he was president, right? But I knew he was, and I could tell, but he was so good at it. You go, these people are literally bad people. Like, they've got this like aura and charisma, and they just lie. And I think people have a really hard time understanding that, and these are, and you could say, okay, Josh, well, they're not lying. They just, whatever information they had. Well, come on. Like, a lie is a lie. Like, you call it for what it is, right? If the banking system implodes in 2 weeks, they were lying. They knew, right? And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I certainly don't have confidence that everything's hunky dory, right? Like, we'll start to see they raise rates 25 basis points again, more pressure, and maybe that's what they want, right? Maybe they want, these regional banks to fail and get bailed out and then become owned by the big four or something along that lines. Look, I'm not an expert, but like, you know you know what I'm saying.
I do, and I think one thing, this is what they're not talking about. They're not talking about, they're only talking about the bad apples in the basket. There are perhaps some banking institutions that are very well run. They have solid management teams. They have risk and compliance. They have risk managers that are well skilled. They have compliance teams that are well skilled. They understand the down to the letter of the law, and they're following every rule that exists, and they're ultra risk averse. They probably run razor thin margins, but they're somehow but they're still in business. And the folks that have their money deposited there are their deposits are most likely very, very safe. But at the end of the day, it's still a commercial. The banks that fail are commercial enterprises. They're not nationalized institutions. They're not government agencies. They're commercial businesses that have to operate in the economy, just like you and I have to trade time for dollars and run our lives like a mini business. Like the Silicon Valley Bank was just a business that made some really unfortunate choices and got caught doing so, and the market forces took over, and then the government forces took over, like, and then some other shady things happened with Signature Bank, but we'll never know the truth on that. And I think
Yeah, and you could go
people are
into
going to forget about that in
you
like another week or so. It'll be on to
go into
the next thing will be dangled in front of us, and we'll be doing this broadcast in 2 weeks, and I'll be reminding everything. I'll be bringing up things that we've already nationally forgot, or like globally have already forgotten about. And
Yeah, well,
the same.
this year I'm 38 years old, and I learned for the first time that food processing plants explode all the time. That's totally normal. Trains derail all the time. That's totally normal. Giant banks fail all the time. That's totally normal. It was just me who didn't understand that all these
Right.
things are totally normal, right? In all my observations over, no, 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 Josh, don't worry. This is totally normal for three big banks to fail. Totally normal for tons of trains that are. You, Josh, are just ignorant to the fact that these things happen all the time, right? And that's the kind of like response that we're getting from the powers that be. Like, no, 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 these things happen. Don't worry about it. It's fine. all these things are normal. We're being gaslit and lied to, and like people need to wake up to that. And I think that's what Balaji's trying to do with his bet, like the $1 million Bitcoin bet. And he's throwing out facts. Like the stuff he's presenting isn't untrue or pulled out of his ass. Like I think people need to wake up to this fact that this stuff is happening and it's happening fast, right? And you have a better understanding of politics than I do. I look at these people as, allies in the sense that they could potentially, be on your side, right? And so that we have to work with them in the sense that that's the system we live in and that's how it should work. But it seems to me that a very small percentage of these people have gained way too much power, right? And I just don't know where that goes in relation to all I see with the small percentage of people that have way too much power. All they care about is control. They don't want what's best for you and me. Your local senator, very well may represent your best interest, right? And I think a lot of them do, you know. But the people at top here, they don't care. All they want is control. They don't, you are expendable, right? Like it doesn't matter, right? Like in what you were saying earlier, those people should work for you. They look at you as just another number, right? Like they don't care. I'm
Cattle.
talking about the small people, the people that are really in charge, right? I think a lot of the senators and a lot of the politicians might actually mean well despite their inability to act well, right? Like, so, you know, but just a personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't envy the task. I just remembered something interesting. Someone I grew up with, who is kind of a he's a way into the conspiracy side of things, but moved to New York City to try and make it in as a stand-up comedian, which us growing up, we knew that was a tall order. I mean, you really gotta be something special to be successful in that business. I mean, a lot of other businesses where you really got to be something special, but he posted something on a Facebook post one day, and that was so magical to me. And I was just like, man, this is amazing. Uh, and the statement was, he said, people that complain about governments never had to run one. And I thought that was interesting because I still think about, this was years ago, and I still think about this periodically, is that I don't envy the task of being in any level of government and trying to deal with all of the things that come at these folks. And I don't know what it's like, but what I do know is that I don't have any appetite for it personally. And I'm trying to do my best to like learn and analyze and understand like like what the spectrum might be like. And that's why I say things like, I wonder what it's like to be in a position like a Gensler or a Yellen, and now you're insulated to a certain extent where you're not dealing with individuals at the citizen level, but you're dealing with lots of other pressures and things, like, and I don't know what those things are. I just know that there's
Yeah, I
there's other
mean,
things that we can't see.
I get it, but I just look at what they do. What they do is not helping people. What they
It
do,
is not. I do agree with what you're
I
saying,
can't,
and
I cannot, I can't put myself in their shoes, nor do I want to. But I get what you're saying. It's an interesting thought experiment to try to. But at the end of the day, I mean, all you can look at is your actions, right? And that's all that matters at the end of the day. And in my opinion, right? Like, and right now the SEC is being pretty unreasonable, and I know
yeah,
that
that
because of all of the crypto companies that are saying that, look, we've looked for guidance and they just don't respond, or we don't hear back, or like, what are they going to do, go out and sue everybody? Like, does the American taxpayer really need to do that? It's absurd.
it is absurd, and they're going to go after. Look, if it were me, the strategy would be, who can we be seen to go after, to be seen to be taking strong enforcement action, to be seen to be protecting the American consumer
Yeah, that
instead
that
of.
makes sense. I get it. I get it.
And I don't condone that behavior, but that's just how, like, I mean, there's
Well,
plenty of
and
other
a-
examples.
again with
I'm
Twitter
sorry.
and YouTube and everything else, you have all these people that jump on and offer their unsolicited opinion about everything with no real good reason to give it, right? And I'm guilty of that too. We all do it. I say stuff all the time, and it's fun, whatever. Like but you just got to be careful of what you read, and at the same hand, while I feel there being, maybe this is just part of the process, right? Like, this is we knew this would happen in our industry, right? We knew that we'd get pressure. The nice thing is administrations change, they overstep, or if they are unreasonable, yeah, it makes it difficult, but eventually the technology will win. Can't stop it, right? They can do stuff to slow it down, but it's code, just on the internet. Yeah, they could shut the internet down. Sure, I don't. I'm. If they wanted to, but the problem is they shut the internet down. They shut down their whole deal, right? That's
That's right.
that's
So how does the government spy on you if they turn off the internet? I mean, it's the surveillance mechanism in history, perhaps,
yeah.
as
It's
some
the
people would say.
I don't
So,
really
well,
worry too much about that.
so I think in summary, and circling back around, like what we saw yesterday was there's a bit of, I think it's hilarious that Powell just kind of at the end there was just like, that's all I'm going to say. He answered that last or made that last statement and then said, that's all I'm going to say about it, and packed his things and rolled out. And that was a page out of Biden's playbook, which is where I walk into a room, I stand in front of some microphones, and I say some things, and then I turn around and leave. Now imagine if former President Trump had pulled some stunt like that, and how the mainstream media would have been outraged. But the
Yeah,
mainstream media doesn't
totally.
get outraged at Biden
Hey,
for doing this. So I'm just saying that, like, the bias in the media is really, really obvious. I think the silver lining there is that people are starting, like, even people that are way leaning in that direction, and you know which direction I'm talking about, are starting to become frustrated and disenfranchised, or feeling disenfranchised, and being like, wait a minute, the promises that were made are not being kept. Oh my gosh, a politician didn't follow through with what they said they were going to do. Oh my gosh. And we'll see. The point I was trying to get to is that there's a bit of a divergence yesterday that matters. Is that Powell said one thing, Yellen walked back and said another with regard to protecting the smaller banks, and or protecting deposits, I should say, or guaranteeing deposits. Let me make sure I get it right. Uh, the point I'm trying to get to is that the the base case for things like Bitcoin is still intact. I think the market reaction, like the price reaction yesterday, simply the same Bitcoin that we cared about from January 1st until 2 days ago, that was going up in price because people were realizing, wait a minute, I should probably get some of this stuff, or any number of reasons to acquire it, is still intact, except Bitcoin went on sale a little bit yesterday, and it is going to, it's a volatile asset. Crypto is a volatile asset class. There are plenty of other assets that are volatile. If you look at bank stocks, they look like volatile assets lately. These things happen. The point I'm trying to get to is that the base case for protecting yourself is still intact. No problems. None of the problems that exist in the current financial system were solved in the last 48 hours. None. The more money is being brought into the system by not QE and by not a bailout. Yet rates went up a little bit, which were really the problem in the first place, that exposed all of the cracks in the system, or in the institutions that have failed. And there's plenty of others. I mean, how many do we not know about today that are going to show up. And I mean, 2 weeks from now, when we've all forgotten
Apparently,
about Powell and all this.
apparently, there's about
Sorry.
186 of them.
Okay. How many? Which ones do the media pick up on next? That's like trying to think like the enemy here. What's the mainstream media going to talk about now?
Well,
Like,
they're
what's
gonna
the
come out
next?
and say the next it's gonna be these bank failures are normal and healthy. It's normal and
Okay, I
healthy in
think
doing
I agree with
business.
that. I agree with it. Like, oh, it's just part and parcel. In a free enterprise system, sometimes businesses fail. Yeah. Okay. And I
I
think
saw one guy last night try to compare it to restaurants failing. He's like, it's the same as saying that if some restaurants fail, that the restaurant industry isn't healthy. I'm like, you sell pizza, bro. Like, it's not the same as the banking system. Like, the analogy isn't even close. Like, and it's just, it's one
yeah,
of those,
it's
well,
unbelievable
actually,
the things that guy's probably a CIA plant. I mean, yeah, the thing I think you said something really important earlier is that you really got to take the things you read, especially on the internet. You can take it with a grain of salt because there's plenty of there's so much money in the banking in the business of banking. There's so much money being made that when the banking system doesn't like something, they'll throw a couple
well,
$100 million at something and get.
and
I
you
mean,
can
there's
tell who these
there's plenty.
people are. They're not genuine. Like, you can, it's easy to see. Like, they don't make cohesive points. They're not, it's just like somebody new pops in from out of nowhere, right? That hasn't been around, and all of a sudden has a huge. I mean, to get a following, it costs money, right? It takes time. Like,
Hmm.
people don't just show up out of nowhere and like are uber successful and relevant in this stuff. It's like, all right, like, where'd you come from? Like, what's the deal? And if you give it enough time, like in these clubhouse rooms or Twitter spaces, these people are everywhere.
That's right, and some of them are just trying to sow division, and some of them are compensated to do so. So anyway, the things I was trying to say before, just moments ago, the base case for Bitcoin is still intact. None of the problems none of the problems that validated the base case even further than it already has been validated over the last decade have changed. I think that's why we've seen a relatively muted response in price action. A bunch of people got short, and yet we didn't. Yeah, it pulled back some, sure, but like the short term minded market participants that are piling in short are just taking a different type of risk. And the min there's more and more one mind at a time as more and more people realize. The other thing that's important to remember is that Bitcoin is global, and there are things going on outside this country that none of us have any idea about that are good for Bitcoin. And when people globally in emerging markets economies, for example, start to wake up and they start to acquire this thing in large numbers, then I'm just saying, if you're short, I hope you have good risk management in play, because you can't we've learned that you can't hold this thing back, and no government is going to stop it. The Chinese tried, the Europeans are trying, the people in the US are trying, and all they're doing is stoking the fire of people saying, "Wait a minute, I'm not going to be controlled by
Yeah,
some."
and I think too, you're going to start to see, like I said earlier, that the more they send out these notices, people are going to care. Like, it's the Elon Musk effect. People used to really care. The market would take a big hit when all this news came out, but it's just like, all right, like, you're going to be in court. The SEC is going to waste American taxpayer dollars fighting frivolous cases in court for the next 3 years. Like, congratulations, guys. You know, what's the point? You're just pissing away money, right? Like, and I think people will take that approach too. They'll look at this stuff and start to get angry. Like, why are you spending taxpayer dollars fighting something that everybody wants? Like, what's your real goal? But anyway, I think that's a great place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Always, as always, none of what we say is financial advice. I don't think we gave any financial advice today, just opinions. So do your own
Hmm.
research. Watch out for spies. They're everywhere.
That's right. They sure are.
All right, buddy. We'll see you tomorrow.